Welcome. This is Chapter 3 of Introduction to a Devout Life by St. Francis de Sales. The title of this chapter is Devotion is Compatible with Every Station of Life. As in the creation, God commanded the plants to bring forth their fruits, each one according to its kind. So he commands all Christians, who are living plants of his church, to bring forth the fruits of devotion, each according to his quality and vocation. Devotion ought then not to only be differently exercised by the gentleman, the tradesman, the servant, the prince, the widow, the maid, and the married woman, but its practice should be also adapted to the strength, the employments, and the obligations of each one in particular. For I ask you, Philothea, is it fit that a bishop should lead the solitary life of a Carthusian, or that married people should lay up no greater store than the Capuchin? If a tradesman were to remain the whole day in the church, like the religious, or were the religious man continuously exposed to encounter difficulties in the service of his neighbor, as a bishop is, would not such devotion be ridiculous, preposterous, and insupportable? This fault is nevertheless very common, and hence the world, which distinguishes not between real devotion and the indiscretion of those who imagine themselves to be devout, murmurs at the devotion which cannot prevent these disorders. No, Philothea, true devotion does not harm whatever, but rather gives perfection to all things. But when it is not compatible with our lawful vocation, then without doubt it is false. The bee, says Aristotle, extracts honey from flowers without injuring them, and leaves them as entire and as fresh as she found them. True devotion goes still farther, for it not only does not injury to any vocation or employment, but on the contrary adorns and beautifies it. All sorts of precious stones, when cast into honey, receive a greater luster, each according to its color. So everyone's vocation becomes more agreeable when united with devotion. By devotion, the care of the family is rendered more peaceable, the love of husband and wife more sincere, the service of the prince more faithful, and every employment more pleasant and agreeable. It is an error, or rather a heresy, to say that devotion is incompatible with the life of a soldier, a tradesman, a prince, or a married woman. It is true, Philothea, that a devotion purely contemplative, monastical, and religious cannot be exercised in those vocations. But besides these three kinds of devotion, there are several others proper to conduct to the perfection of those who live in secular state. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, David, Job, Tobias, Sarah, Rebecca, and Judith, they bear witness of this in the Old Testament. And in the New Testament, St. Joseph, Lydia, and St. Crispin, they practice perfect devotion in their shops. St. Anne, St. Martha, St. Monica, Aquila, Priscilla, they practice perfect devotion in their families. Cornelius, St. Sebastian, St. Maurice, they practice perfect devotion in the army. Constantine, Helena, St. Louis, Blessed Amadeus, and St. Edward, they practiced perfect devotion on the throne. Nay, it has happened that many have lost perfection in the desert who preserved in the world, which seems so little favorable to perfection. Lot, says St. Gregory, who was so chaste in the city, defiled himself in the wilderness. Wheresoever then, where we are, we may and should aspire to the perfect life. And so concludes Chapter 3 of Introduction to a Devout Life by St. Francis de Sales.